Good morning. Good morning. It's Wednesday. We're midweek, and gee, hasn't it been flying? Like I just vaguely remember saying it's Monday the other day, and it's just going so fast, and it's been raining
every week.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, and we're in March already. We're nearing. I know. It's just going. How fast is it going? So we're here on Wednesday Wisdom. Thank you for watching. If you're watching, hashtag replay. If you're watching the replay, we love having you here and participating and commenting and sharing what you love about what you're hearing, and the value that you're getting out, any questions and that sort of thing. So love for you to participate. We can't see those questions until we jump in afterwards, and if you're watching on YouTube, love for you to comment on YouTube and hashtag what do you call that little bell thing, notifications, and subscribe and all that jazz. Subscribe, hit the bell, do all that sort of stuff. We all sort of know the drill these days, don't we? So we're here with the beautiful Alexia. And Alexia and I have another event coming up as well, so we'll talk about that soon. But I'd love to hear more about who you are, Alexia, and what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I joined you for Wisdom Wednesday in January.
Yeah.
And it feels like it was just yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to be back. I had great fun last time, so I'm sure today will be no different. So I'm Alexia. Hello everybody. I specialize in emotional burnout in women. So my qualifications are, I'm a life coach, I'm a transformologist, but what I do is I work with high achieving professional women who struggle with, having to juggle everything and find themselves overstretched, burnt out, and helping them build that emotional resilience and really start to set those healthy habits so that they can essentially become burnout proof. Because once you can be proactive with how you manage your own well-being, you're less likely to be susceptible to, stressful events. Now, I'm not saying that you will never experience stress again, because we're not robots. It's about your ability to be able to cope, to be able to bounce back really quickly so that you can just get on with life rather than having it impact you on a daily basis. One of the healthy habits that I work with my clients on is setting healthy boundaries. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, because and I was one of them, but as women, we can really struggle with setting boundaries because we've got this internal conflict going on. So, when I say as women, the most obvious thing is that innate maternal instinct. And this is regardless of whether you're a mother or not. If you're a woman, you're likely going to have that maternal instinct. And, part of that is wanting to put everybody else before yourself. We look after everybody else first. And sometimes that can be a bit counterintuitive. Like, I'm not saying having a maternal instinct is a bad thing, because it's not. It's honestly, it's what makes the world keep going.
Yeah. And well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we are naturally nurturing within our makeup, right? Mm-hmm. And yet we're also conditioned to be good girls.
Yep.
And so that natural nurturing aspect of ourselves gets somehow redirected in this dysfunctional way. That means that we're serving everybody else, putting ourselves last, if at all, and therefore, like, having no understanding of what it is that we really desire in our life and going for it. And if we do, like, then there's connotations to that as well, and labels to that, and all of that sort of stuff. And that's that burnout, right? That overwhelm, this conflict between what's right for society, what's right for ourselves, all of those things, right? So this internal battle that you were just talking about. And before we go any further, I just want to say, I've never heard that before. Transformologist. I love that. That's so good, right?
That
The
usually
study
pulls a
of
few people up. They go,
transforming.
what's that?
Yeah. Well, I did medical terminology at one stage. So, you know, ologist is the study of. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, the study of transforming is, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah. It's essentially, it's a qualification that helps me get irreversible change. And the things that we've just started talking about now is that conditioning, those stories, how we can resolve those in a way that's irreversible. So women don't keep reverting back to old patterns. That's essentially at the core of what I do. And there's just so many, especially when we come to setting boundaries, exactly like you said, the good girl complex. Oh, that is something that I struggled with a lot. And it's because, you know, and it isn't said with any bad intent, but even as little girls, we're told, you know, be a good girl.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's, you know, it's coming up where there's a lot of these familial beliefs that we have that we hear from being little girls that we then take into adulthood, and it's kind of warped because even though it was said with whatever intent, we take that belief on and we give it its own meaning. And we allow this to dictate how we run our lives. So, you know, even there's all these little stories that we're told, the ones that I can think of, you know, pick your battles or keep the peace, all those sorts of things. And when you've got that in the back of your mind and that's your internal programming, when you're, you know, wanting to set a boundary and say, actually, no, or actually, that's not something that I'm willing to accept, or actually, no, I need to, whatever the boundary needs to be, you've got that internal conflict going on because it's your mind's going, but hang on a minute, you've got to be a good girl. Hang on a minute. No, you've got to keep the peace. That's what good girls do, right?
It's like, and we tend to take on like the submissive role, or we freeze in a situation where we freeze and we don't know, you know, what it is that someone might, you know, are we misconceiving what they're saying? You know, like are we, you know, putting things on, you know, like especially in the situation with, you know, other powerful women that may have moved into a masculine role, or men, you know, like we tend to not be able to navigate the way we need to communicate to stand in that strength and to have those boundaries, right? So it's something that we need to relearn or learn for the first time. Yeah.
And I think part of it too is something that you said there made me think about, you know, when we're talking about masculine and feminine and, you know, the fact that as women, we are those nurturers. I think sometimes where we get stuck is that we think that by setting a boundary that's, you know, aggressive or it's a masculine thing to do, or we shouldn't be doing that as women. And because when you think about it, so if you're having to, and I think that there's this whole misconception with the word assertive. Like there's actually nothing wrong with being assertive. Being assertive is, you know, being able to clearly and confidently say what it is that you want. It's not about being rude or aggressive or anything like that. And being assertive is, you know, one of the key concepts to be able to set a boundary in a way that's respected. But I think that word and the whole thought of doing that gets kind of misconceived, and we worry about what other people, and there's that whole people pleasing thing coming into it, right? And that's also, you know, a stress response. We fawn. People pleasing is a method of fawning, and you know, we back down, and because what our brains does unconsciously is that if the thought of setting a boundary or being assertive or saying what it is that we need to say to protect ourselves and our own energy, if that is bringing up any of these beliefs like people pleasing, not wanting to let people down, or, you know, if that feels worse, then your brain is going to go to the lesser of two evils. So even it's going to go, okay, well that, you know, doing that, going against what I believe, or, you know, disappointing somebody, or, being judged by somebody for saying no, that's actually worse than doing it and, feeling tired or exhausted or burnt out or resentful or whatever it is afterwards. So that's why you're going to have that whole difficulty in saying no. And that's why, a lot of the time, you feel, and this is something that I can remember so clearly, you're wanting to say no, in your head, it's going, no, 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 no. But then out of your mouth is coming, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What did I do that for?
Yeah. It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because that's one of the things that I teach in Conscious Creator is, because everything has a structure, right? But one of the things that we do is energy follows the path of least resistance. And so, if the energy is flowing easier towards what our wounding is, our egoic nature is, our subconscious patterns are, of being the good girl, and it's easier and more comfortable, then that's where we're going to flow.
Absolutely.
And so to shift that into a different orientation, that's where the work is, right? That's the transformation, and that's where coaches and mentors come in to support someone to know, yes, you're okay, yes, you're doing the right thing, yes, it's like, especially as a good girl, we tend to need to get validation that we're on the right path with that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we perpetuate this behavior because we're trying to get that, that pat on the head to say, we're on the right path, we're doing the right thing. And, that can kind of be coupled as well with that whole I should. And it's something that, like, what everybody has this idea. And I think we've also got that societal pressure as well of, what as a woman we should be doing. Like, as a mother, what should you be doing? There's all this judgment happening about what it means to be a good woman, a good mother, a successful woman, a good daughter, whatever that is. And so we find ourselves repeating these mindset patterns of all the things that we should be doing, because it fits into the mold of the norm of society, regardless of whether it's actually the right thing for you. And, just because everybody else is doing something, it doesn't mean that you have to either. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're doing the wrong thing, but it's about breaking that ingrained belief system that is telling you otherwise, that you're fighting against internally.
Yeah, absolutely. And, how appropriate we're talking about this, International Women's Day yesterday.
I know. Yes.
And over, was it last weekend, I think, I went to a Women with Altitude conference, which is a networking group down here. Really beautiful women, and it was a big, 3-day event or something. But they had Mia Friedman? She worked in Cosmopolitan and Dolly and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, she showed a video of International Women's Day that I put on my personal page. I think I even put it in Women of Light, actually, as well, where a guy is swapping the roles, like this guy, A Day in a Life. Have you seen it?
Yes. And it's so powerful, isn't it?
It's so powerful because, I'm in a group of, like there's about 60 women in the, and there was a couple of men in this venue, and you watched as, we started with laughing, and then when we realized what it was actually all about, and everything, changed, and the silence about, because when you're a powerful woman in business, like Alexia, I know that you are, and I know that I am, we can forget what's actually going on outside in the real world. We were just saying, here I am in my bubble because I didn't know that I couldn't get to Sydney because it's flooded, like all these things, right? So you can get caught up in your little bubble. But that video is so powerful because we are still, you know, being the good girl. We are still being conditioned to just take it when someone, you know, makes some sort of slide remark about our sexuality or our how we look, or we are still not getting equal pay. We are still, all of these things, you know, we are still having to worry about walking home late at night, you know, like all of these things that is, you know, just a condition of the society and the history of how we've evolved as humans, right? But now's the time to create that transformation, to shift out of that and to change our mindsets for the generations to come, our little girls, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, that is at the heart of why I do what I do, is because we are showing the next generation what's possible. And even by, it's that ripple effect, isn't it? When we make the changes in our life, when we stand up in our power, when we're able to, you know, release all of that conditioning that's keeping us small, and in that cycle of self-sacrifice and buried under that pressure of what you should be doing, once we can release that, we are showing what's possible to the next generation.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, you can't control your external environment, and the reality is, and as sad as it is, there are still threats to our, you know, there are threats to us outside of us. Like when you say that fear of walking home, like that happens. Violence against women, it happens, and we can't change that. And boundaries necessarily isn't going to change. It's not going to change that. But when you are, like, when we relate that back to boundaries, when you are feeling threatened, that's when it is normal to take that submissive role, as you say. And I even remember as well, like, it is such a true, and that's why that video, I believe, was so profound, because I even remembered when I was catching the train into the city, when I was working in the city, and if it was getting dark by the time I got home, which in Brisbane in winter, it's dark at like 4 o'clock. Well, that's an exaggeration, but it feels like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I would have my keys. I would hold my keys in between all my fingers and walk so fast to the car. And I remember, and this is where I think it's so important to spread that awareness, because I was actually watched this and I showed my husband, and he's going, oh, well, and he didn't understand. And I said, I have never told you, because this is just something that we take on as normal as women. We don't question it. We just think this is what we have to do. And because this is life, this is how we've been raised all along. Like, even I remember being at school, and they were teaching us to always put your hand over your drink, because it was up to us to protect ourselves, which, you know, is true, even though it's awful that we have to do this, but it is the reality of the world. We can't control what's happening outside. But my husband had no idea.
Yeah. And
I think spreading that awareness that this is something that we struggle with every day is actually really powerful as well. Because it's, you know, knowledge is power, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were talking, one of the things that came up for me is, you know, as women, we are so, you know, we're creators, right? We can create life within our womb. You know, it's a beautiful thing to be a woman. And we're nurturers. We're naturally nurturing. We're natural gatherers. We, you know, gather the community. We're natural leaders and all of those things. And so as we're discovering who we are and becoming more empowered, part of that process is also what's the right word for it, is getting our men to stand up to be men, to be true, real men, and, you know, like holding that space and being protectors, that, you know, not being perpetrators, and, you know, like, and holding them accountable to what it is to be a real man as well, because they've lost sight of that as well. The dysfunctions of society that have created men and women to, what are our boundaries? Who are we? How do we fit together? What is equality? Because, equality has been created to be, let's be the same. Well, actually, we're not. We're not the same, And so the more we understand our role, the more we can stand up and be assertive about, well, actually, no, I don't like that in you either, like this is who I am. And I can see that you can be a better man within that time, within that framework as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this all circles back to challenging those conditions and the beliefs. And there's another thing while you were talking, and this is also what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, is you've got that intergenerational trauma as well, and how that gets passed down through the bloodline. It's why you see a lot of family patterns happening. It's why you see, and it's awful, but it's the reality. It's these beliefs and this conditioning that, you see women that go through generation after generation being victims of domestic violence. Yeah. You see, even perpetrators. It all comes down from, what is this ingrained conditioning, this ancestral trauma, and it's going, like there's studies as well about incarceration, intergenerational incarceration. And it's the reason why it's so relevant is because sometimes, and I don't mean to sound this like there's no hope, because it's not, I'll get to that part in a minute, but when people are stuck in a cycle, so particularly as women, when we know that something's not good for us, but we still find ourselves in the same situation, it's because that's what we're attracting, because that's what we've inherited. That's our conditioning. And that's why it's really hard to break that, or it feels like it's really hard to break that. But it doesn't have to be hard. There is a simple way to do that. And it absolutely can be done. The key is actually having that really clear self-awareness to begin with, and taking responsibility and actually seeing it for what it is. And then you can do whatever steps you need to do. I know that it's something that this is exactly what I help my clients with, but there's a lot of methods and modalities out there that's right for different women and even men as well, to start to really break down those patterns so that they can, create the life that they want, so they can start living in a way that's congruent to their values and not feel like they're in this constant internal conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all the stuff that they're, learning or studying with epigenetics, right? It's I'm a real pattern person, and I love watching patterns, and even the little patterns that I, watched within my family structure, be prior to me, but then seeing it play out in my kids, things like the schooling process, when we all stopped going to school, year 10, I had a trauma that happened and didn't go on to year 11, right? And so I watched that pattern happen in my kids as well, and then found out that that's something afterwards, that's something that happened, to my brothers and, previous. So
it's very really powerful. So every time I talk about it, I get goosebumps, because it is so powerful in understanding, because it's once you can identify that and see that, and now that you've seen that in your family line, it kind of unlocks this.
Yes.
It's like, the biggest aha moment of your life, to know that you can now forge a different path. You do not have to be a victim of that same, just because it has happened to everybody else in the family doesn't mean that it's going to happen to you. Just because it's happened to everybody else, there were other women that, doesn't mean that it has to happen to you. And it doesn't mean that you have to pass this on to your children either. And it's about breaking that cycle.
It's knowledge is power, right? Because there's something about the acknowledgement of something. I've said this for many years. I reckon, 70% of healing is the acknowledgement of what's actually going on. And then, the rest sort of happens as after that, it just sort of pans out and does its thing. So we're actually talking again. We're having an event tomorrow night, which is so cool, about the intergenerational process, which I love, because that's, again, the same sort of work that I do with recoding and with my conscious creator clients and stuff. So it's 5:30 Queensland time, 6:30 Sydney time. So if you're interested, if you're watching this and you're interested in finding out more or would like the link, then just put yes please in the comments here, and we will send you the link so that you can register. So lovely to have you on, Alexia.
Thank you. I love coming again. It was really good.
Yeah. And again, put all your details in the comments, and we'll both jump in and say hello to everyone. And we'll catch you soon.
Sounds great. Well, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes. Take care.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Bye.